Evening from Washington. I am Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. We have a jam-packed show for you tonight. Sensational stories, many of them you haven't heard anywhere else. For coast to coast, we have it covered. There's an explosive war of words underway in California over the sanctuary state laws there. As the Attorney General Jeff Sessions sues the state, Governor Jerry Brown calls Sessions a liar who's just launching a reign of terror. Nice. Plus, a pair of chilling domestic terror stories, including a cross-country jihad. The rest of the media are virtually ignoring this. And Dr. Phil analyzes the White House? What? While the media assails the president, it's all in our Unseen and Seen segment. But first, reading, writing, and activism are collegiate indoctrination factories. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Watching how things have played out during the first 13 months of the Trump era, I've come to the conclusion that liberals just aren't that interested in advocating policies that improve the lives of Americans. But what they do want, and it's part of the Obama legacy, is a constant state of protest and agitation, a resistance force-fed to them in their high school and college years. And now professors themselves are nurturing the next generation of revolutionaries. At many colleges, students are now expected to skip class to attend social justice rallies. Case in point, on Yale's admissions blog under the title "In Support of Student Protests," the assistant director of admissions writes, "For those students who come to Yale, we expect them to be versed in issues of social justice." According to Walter Olson and your Wall Street Journal, Yale does not count skipping classes for protests like we've seen lately against applicants. No problem whatsoever. Now check this out. The dean of admissions at Tufts University, her name is Karen Richardson, after the Parkland shooting issued this statement to applicants. She said, "I want to assure you that Tufts is a place where civic engagement is not only tolerated, it's encouraged strongly. So when you act on your values in a principled way on issues about which you feel passionately, it will not be held against you in the application process. In fact, we may even take notice." So forget volunteering with the elderly or helping special needs children and put that on your college application. If you really want to get into that college of your choice, go yell at a conservative senator and then post it on YouTube. There are other universities also stoking activism out there. At Valdosta State in Georgia, the Women's and Gender Studies Department encourages students in their division to organize and implement annual social justice events, such as the Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month, and you get productions of the Vagina Monologues and National Coming Out Day. But politically, perhaps I have to think about this. Well, no one did more to encourage student organizing like Barack Obama. Last year, he talked about training the next generation of community organizers.
Mateo and I and others have been talking about how we can create an effective network of global activists, some who are in politics, some who are in business, some who are in journalism or working for NGOs, and provide them the tools, the training, the networks, the relationships, the funding, so that they can be even more effective.
I thought we were supposed to be training like code writers to work in the 21st century economy, but we're training the activists. And I would say about what the president said there, they've already been pretty effective, right? Policing speech codes on college campuses, ejecting administrators who don't toe their political line, and now pushing for DACA and gun control laws. But there's something insidious afoot here. A few years ago, Nicholas Christakis, who's the head of a Yale college, was forced to resign after his wife, also a professor, dared to send out a mass email objecting to Yale's Halloween costume rules. She suggested merely that Yale students be allowed to wear whatever they want as a costume, kind of pro-choice, even obnoxious or offensive costumes. Well, the protest crowd cornered Christakis on the quad. He tried to have an actual discussion with them.
So we're sitting here telling you that you are being racist. It shouldn't be a question as to whether you owe us an apology.
And empathy is not necessary for you to understand that you're wrong.
Let us tell you if you're being racist.
Okay, no.
Actually, that is actually how it works. You don't get a choice here.
I disagree.
It's not a debate.
Look at me.
Yes.
Look at me.
Yes.
Look me in my face, first of all.
You never tried to know who I am.
Do not interrupt me.
Using the word hurt your feelings is not treating you like.
You wait until it is your turn.
Away from
Just talk louder. Look at
I'm
her.
doing my best.
You were disgusting.
This is not a debate. Did you hear that? Well, at least they admit it now. They're not interested in debate. They would rather grandstand and bully and hurl insults than actually make a cogent argument. Now, is it any wonder why a Knight Foundation survey found that 54% of college students say the climate on campuses stifles their expression for fear of offending others? The indoctrination of these students begins earlier and earlier. I'm talking grammar and middle school. And once reprogrammed, liberal adults deploy these student bots to do their own political bidding. Just look at the way they've used the high school students in Parkland. Certain Stoneman Douglas students successfully did use their social media platforms to spread their anti-gun demands, no doubt about it. But let's pull back the curtain here. Groups like Everytown for Gun Safety, founded by billionaire Michael Bloomberg, gave $2.5 million to support hundreds of marches for gun control, including the big one later this month. The Washington Post is telling us that high school students in the St. Louis area are not only planning a walkout on April 20th, but they're planning a protest at the office of Republican Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley, who wants to unseat Democrat Senator Claire McCaskill. Again, the goal here is political power. The idea that this is like merely a student-led, totally organic, altruistic crusade to end gun violence, it's just carefully enough. The focus here really is power, and it's partisan. March on the nearest conservative? Take down one of the biggest advocacy groups like the NRA? You bet. Don't fall for all the fresh young faces you see reciting the liberal tropes. These student protesters are amplified, supported, and funded by old guard liberals. Yeah, Hollywood elites like George Clooney and Oprah, business elites like Michael Bloomberg, and the media vanguard at places like NBC and, of course, CNN. So without all of that support, of course they wouldn't be receiving this attention. Maybe they'd even be back at school learning something. But when you can get college credit or maybe even a fast pass to the Ivy Leagues by protesting, why study? You know, hanging out with Bill Maher and Ellen is like helping me find my voice, my truth, my social justice mission. Totally. And that's the angle. Yesterday, the mayor of Baltimore, Maryland, announced the city will help students get to the March for Our Lives, that gun control rally, in Washington later this month.
It is all about hearing the voices of young people. And so we're taking 60 buses from Baltimore City, Baltimore City, because we want your voices to be heard in Washington, D.C.
Joining us now is the mayor of Baltimore, Catherine Pugh, who supported and addressed hundreds of students who walked out of their classrooms yesterday demanding gun control legislation. Mayor, it is great to have you on the show. I so appreciate your time tonight. Tell us about what your goal is here in Baltimore. This march is going to take place in a few weeks in Washington. But what do you want to achieve by helping the students go down?
So first, let me say thank you, Laura, for this invite, and it's good to be here this evening with you. So our goal is to allow the young people's voices to be heard. We didn't even know the young people were marching down to City Hall, but when we did hear that they were coming, I thought it was important to receive them, because when you have these many young people who are afraid and frightened to be in their classrooms, who are asking you to help them go out and want to have you hear their voices. I mean, they did not necessarily even know about the march in Washington, some of them, but many of them wanted their voices to be heard in terms of the violence that's happening in our city, in our country, and throughout this nation. And so they want their voices to be heard, and we thought it was important to address them, to welcome them, and at the same time, we were being reached out as a city close to Washington, asking if we would be interested in helping young people to get to Washington, D.C., so that their voices could be heard as it relates to gun violence in this country. And as you well know, we've had some 320 different school shootings since 2013. And when young people are asking you, are you protecting our schools? Are you protecting us? Are you going to make sure we're safe? And just in our state alone, our governor has issued additional resources to help schools to become more safe.
Right,
and
you
to
have
become less violent.
343 murders in Baltimore in 2017.
Absolutely.
It's a devastating number. Horrific violence. Have some of the toughest gun laws in the country. In Maryland, we all know that.
Well, I don't know if we have some of the toughest gun laws in the country, but what we do have, according to November, December, January, February, we're actually trending downward in terms of
that's good, because
gun violence
last year
in our
was
city,
a disaster.
and we're very happy about that.
Mayor, let's go through what's happening in the Baltimore school system, because you're funding 60 buses to go down to the march. It's going to be a big march here in Washington.
We also have funding that's being provided by the private sector as well as individuals who are donating money, so that we can make sure that on a Saturday morning, when young people want to go to Washington, D.C., to have their voices heard, that they're able to do that and to be able to do that safely.
Okay.
Well, it isn't working.
Right. The Baltimore school system.
I don't know if you know that, but it's not working here.
Right. The Baltimore school system, here's some statistics. The enrollment is falling now to a 10-year low. We have a $130 million budget deficit for fiscal year 2018.
I don't know what that has to do with the number of young people.
Well, let me finish and then I'll tell you why. 150.
These are private school children.
I know why you don't want
these are children who are interested in being active and having their voices heard. These are tomorrow's voters. These are young people who are very concerned about the future of their country,
and your schools are being laid off.
On March the 24th,
insufficient heat in your classrooms. 38 million needed for HVAC and other repairs. So 115 school personnel laid off. First time we've had teacher layoffs in 10 years.
So hopefully when they get to Washington, D.C., they'll be able to express that interest as well.
But, okay, I understand that point, Mayor. I'd like you,
our city,
with all due respect, Mayor, I'd like you to answer this question. Mayor,
what is the question, Laura?
My question is this.
I'm listening, Laura.
You are suffering in Baltimore, as many other metropolitan areas are as well. It's not unique to Baltimore, but nevertheless, you're suffering from declining enrollment. You're suffering from a huge budget deficit, while your office is adding 20 staffers. We're not suffering from a huge budget deficit. $130 million budget deficit for education in this fiscal year.
Yeah, well, that's not our entire city budget. So I thought you were talking about
your schools. We're talking about you're funding buses in part to go down to Washington, and yet you have a budget deficit and you're laying off students.
Straight, love. I don't know whether you're trying to become the communications director for the Trump administration.
I don't know why you're getting personal, Mayor. I don't know why you're getting personal.
We're not funding. We are providing assistance to young people to make sure that they get to Washington, D.C. safely.
But why is that your job? Why is that your job as the mayor of Baltimore, to assist student activists? Are you doing that for the March for Life next January?
That's exactly the reason why I'm doing it, because I am the mayor of my city, because I care about my children. I want their voices to be heard, and we're going to make sure that their voices are heard in Washington, D.C.
Have you done that for the March for Life, Mayor?
I'm very excited.
Have you done that for the pro-life march every January?
Actually, the pro-lifers didn't reach out to me. The young people
you would fund them next January?
In our country. The children of our city, of our country, reached out to me. They came down, and we offered to assist them so that they can get to Washington, D.C.
Okay, so you're not spending any money? So all the reports on the $100,000 is false?
Because we have too many assault weapons in this country. We have too many children being killed. We have too many people being killed in the streets of our city. So we're excited for them, and certainly grateful to you for
Mayor,
allowing us to be here this evening.
Are you concerned about the fact that 13 of the 19 Baltimore high schools have 0 students today who are meeting grade level proficiency in math?
I am concerned about every single individual who lives in my city. I'm concerned about our schools. I'm concerned about the fear that exists among young people in this country, in my city.
Isn't that a bigger problem, though? Isn't that a
lives.
bigger problem than training student activists?
There is no bigger problem than having people killed by assault weapons in this country. There's no bigger problem than parents who see young people being killed. There's no bigger problem than people's lives being lost because we have weapons of destruction on the streets of our cities, in our state, and in our country.
As the mayor of Baltimore,
and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. We want to make sure that this country understands that violence is not the way. Assault weapons should not be given to people, and background checks need to be done.
Okay,
and
so Mayor, just so for our audience,
before you
I know you're doing a soliloquy, but Mayor, just so our audience understands, in the future, since you think this is important for students' voices to be heard, if conservative students or pro-life students, can I just finish a question, please? If pro-life students go to you and ask you to provide transportation or support for attending conservative marches because they want their voices heard, will you as mayor of Baltimore support those efforts as well in the education process or just for the student activism process?
Let's be real clear. If the private sector wants to provide buses for individuals to go protest anything in this country, they are willing to support that. Just like the NRA supports all of their issues,
so you're not spending any money?
Young people to have their voices heard in this country.
Okay, so Mayor, are you saying tonight no money is being spent?
To be able to go. I'm saying that there'll be money spent to make sure that our young people get to Washington, D.C.
Okay,
safely.
so that's my question.
Absolutely.
Government money.
The buses
when you guys
free.
Are bleeding teachers are being fired. Personnel are being laid off. You just hired 20 new people, including a new marketing director in your office, which is great. I'm sure they're going to do a great job. We're getting teachers laid off, personnel laid off, and you're shuttling students down to a rally. That just does not seem to make sense.
We hired 22 people to take care of the homeless on our streets. We hired people to take care of our neighborhoods and our communities. No, we did not. A public affairs director.
That story's wrong too. There's a lot of reporting apparently that's not true. You're not spending money to send kids down.
I think you would know about that.
You're not getting a marketing
all the time on television stations, on radio stations, and here on Fox TV.
I think it's so cool.
I came here so that I could share with you what's happening in Baltimore. We're very excited.
Baltimore has been under liberal leadership for how many years?
Washington, D.C., and we hope that you'll be there so that you can welcome them there and you can hear their voices because we believe that the voices of young people in this country
the problems in Baltimore have been going on for years and years and years under liberal leadership. It's not Donald Trump's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault that Baltimore has this high murder rate. Not Baltimore's fault.
I think you brought that issue up. I didn't bring up the issue of Donald Trump. I'm talking about Baltimore City and the need for our children whose voices want to be heard. We want
the kids would like to learn, would they not?
We want to make sure that illegal
so the only thing you're
guns
teaching
aren't on
them
the
is
streets of our city. We want to make sure that assault weapons aren't on the streets of our city. We want to make sure that no more murders happen in any of our schools.
Needed, but we're going to send them down to protest.
Over 300 shootings in our schools,
Laura. And that is the fault of the Maryland government. It's not the fault of the national government.
All these kinds of things
liberal
that people
policies
should not have in their hands. And you may want to call it liberal, but we talk
who's
about
been running
safety,
the city?
protection
have conservatives
of our young
been running
people.
the city?
We want to make sure that our country is safer. We want background checks.
We want to make sure that want to be safer, don't spend a lot of time late at night on the streets of Baltimore.
You should be 21 years of age, and we want to make sure, Laura,
Mayor, we
that
appreciate
our country is safe, and we look forward to seeing you on
I'll look forward to seeing you at the march. Let me say, I'll go to that march if you come to the March for Life. That's a good deal. All right, we're out of time. Mayor's just not going to stop talking. All right, I loved having you on, but it would be nice to have some questions answered. After being schooled on sanctuary state laws, California Governor Jerry Brown comes unglued while attacking Attorney General Jeff Sessions. That's next. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is blasting Democratic officials in California for what he calls their radical open borders agenda. The Justice Department announced yesterday it was filing a lawsuit against the sanctuary state over 3 laws it says obstruct federal immigration policy. In a speech in Sacramento today, Sessions called those laws unconstitutional.
ICE agents are federal law enforcement officers carrying out federal law. California cannot forbid them or obstruct them in doing their jobs. There is no nullification. There is no secession. Federal law is the supreme law of the land. I would invite any doubters to go to Gettysburg or to the tombstones of John C. Calhoun and Abraham Lincoln. This matter has been settled.
California Governor Jerry Brown reacted by calling Sessions a liar, demanding he apologize and accusing him of launching a reign of terror. Brown also gave a shout out to Fox News, although we don't think it was meant as a compliment.
This is really unprecedented for the chief law enforcement of the United States to come out to California and act more like Fox News than a law enforcement officer. This is basically going to war against the state of California, the engine of the American economy. It's not wise, it's not right, and it will not stand.
All right, let's get into all of this with Fox News contributor, former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer, who's in Oakland tonight, and in Fort Worth, Texas, immigration attorney Francisco Hernandez. Let's start with you, Ari. This is wild today. Sessions goes out there, does a flyby in Sacramento, and this is what Jerry Brown said when he first was asked about this event today. Let's watch.
You called this an act of war from the federal government.
An act of war?
You said that.
That's pretty strong. But I reincorporate that comment, yes. Okay.
He reincorporates the comment. I don't know if he meant reiterates. I couldn't follow it. But Ari, this is a wild situation. We have dangerous criminals that ICE is trying to apprehend. And we have mayors, you're in Oakland tonight, Libby Schaaf,
yep.
Warning people leave. That means some violent offenders are absconding, probably because they heard the raids are coming. Who's to blame here?
Look, Laura, I'm a first-generation American. My mother is an immigrant to this great country, and I happen to think immigrants enrich us. They make us a stronger, better country. But you know why they come here? They come here because we have the rule of law, because we're a nation of laws. And when people like the mayor of Oakland go ahead and decide that they can violate the law, they can have sanctuaries, that not only do they are sanctuary cities now, but they actually oppose the enforcement of federal law, the Attorney General is 100% right. This is modern-day nullification. And I'm very glad the Attorney General did what he did, and I say that as a child of an immigrant who loves this country.
Francisco.
Oh, come on. Wave the flag. Miss Ingraham, you were a Supreme Court law clerk. Come on. It's a federal preemption. Why do you have to file a lawsuit to say that what some mayor says is invalid? It is invalid prima facie on its face. A mayor can't oppose the federal government. I mean, come on, really. There is no such thing as a sanctuary city. It's a political phantom. But the problem with the Attorney General filing a lawsuit is maybe he will accidentally recognize that maybe California has the right to obstruct the federal government. We wouldn't be complaining if Virginia did the same thing. It just seems to be that everybody's against California.
Well, Francisco,
but you and I know
that you surely remember, Francisco, that the Obama administration, of course, heavy-footed into Arizona when they came up with their own tough immigration enforcement. And they went in and they said, we preempt you. Were you against that too?
What's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's right. Any sanctuary city policy
Francisco, no. You and I were debating this back then. Obama came in and said federal law preempts you, Arizona. The Supreme Court, in large part, agreed. What Jeff Sessions did today is said, we're following the Obama example on federal preemption. What you're saying is that now you reject that because then you supported it when Obama did it.
I just said, why do you even have to file a lawsuit? States filed the lawsuit against the federal government. Now you're talking about the federal government filing a lawsuit against the states?
Right, because they're obstructing federal immigration process, and that's actually a violation of federal law. Yeah, well, you can't harbor illegal immigrants or encourage illegal immigration. But they don't harbor them.
It's a 48-hour hold.
Oh, my God.
If ICE doesn't pick them up within 48 hours, federal law says they have to release them. That's all it is. It's a federal law that they have to...
you heard what Francisco says. The idea of a sanctuary city, that's just a phantom idea. There's no such thing as sanctuary policies.
It's a political phantom.
Why do they actually have a law establishing a sanctuary state then? Go ahead.
What's a phantom are the 600 people here in the city that I'm in today, Oakland, who got away because they were warned by the mayor. Those 600 illegal immigrants, all of whom have criminal charges standing against them, they escaped because the mayor helped them to escape. Look, if a mayor in New York City warned that the Security and Exchange Commission was coming into Wall Street, and she said, hide all your papers, everybody on Wall Street, people would object. If a mayor who had a lot of union workers and factories in town said, OSHA is coming, the Department of Labor is coming, quick, hide everything you're doing, people would object. No difference between that and what the mayor did here. With the bigger difference being that these people have criminal violations against them. If a mayor hears about it, a mayor's obligation is to help the federal government enforce the law, not take the side of illegal immigrants who are violating the law.
Well, it's endangering everybody, the ICE agents and everyone, including legal immigrants and people living in these neighborhoods. Francisco,
Where's the leak? That's more concerning.
Francisco, are you concerned about crime then being committed by individuals who may have been picked up in this raid after they were warned by the mayor?
No,
Libby Schaaf was crying racism.
Shocker.
She's crying racism. She said Jeff Sessions is basically advancing a racist agenda today. That's lovely.
But
are you worried about the crime that might be committed?
Is the tail wagging the dog? Why don't they pick him up when they're first arrested in the jail?
Means, but it doesn't answer the question.
Why don't they pick him up?
If crime is committed, Francisco, after these guys heard this warning from the mayor who's crying racism, if crime is committed by them, who actually has some culpability here other than the criminal? Libby Schaaf. She's thwarting federal immigration law. The woman should be put in jail. She's harboring illegal immigrants. It's against U.S. law.
You can sustain a federal prosecution because ICE leaked a proposed raid on arrest. Why didn't they pick them up when they first got in jail?
It's a simple point. Subject, verb, direct object. I don't understand why we don't understand it.
It's just because it's California. If it were Virginia, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, believe me, I'd go harder on Virginia, but I appreciate it. Great segment, guys. And by the way, there's a stunning new data on media bias against President Trump. Believe it or not, it's worse than you thought. Stay there. For our seen and unseen segment where we expose what's really behind the curtain on the cultural stories of the day. We need like a whole thing.
Are you signing for the hearing impaired?
I would like to know how to sign.
First up,
the numbers make it clear that the TV networks are not exactly unbiased when it comes to covering the president. Here to explain it all, Fox News contributor, best-selling author Raymond Arroyo.
Doing the scene and
all right, yes, motion. Exactly. We need a graphics package. What's going on? The media? Oh, you're kidding me. The media is anti-Trump.
Well,
shock.
No, but the Media Research Center broke this down, looking at January and February. Laura, they spent 1,400 minutes on the Russia story alone. Guess how many minutes they spent on the economy,
That's
taxes,
more than
major
Russian
issues.
TV spends on Russia stories.
Well, okay, 14 minutes on Russia. 1,400 minutes on Russia. 13 minutes on the economy and taxes.
Oh, because the economy is doing really well. They don't want to talk about the jobs numbers this month, which are way up, February jobs numbers.
You think maybe in between the Stormy Daniels story, we could drop in a couple of stories about how trade and taxes
they don't want it. They don't want it to look, but they spent all that time on that nutbag Sam Nunberg. God bless him.
Oh boy, he was a disaster the other day. And MSNBC, like 50% of their programming day was Sam Nunberg. All of their evening programs.
There's this graphic. This is how much time they spent on it. Even Dan Rather, it's bad. And even Dan Rather is saying, the media's embarrassing itself. This is what's the frequency?
Yeah, the poor man looked like he had a few nips.
Not Dan Rather, Sam Nunberg.
I'm talking about Nunberg.
All right, Scaramouche, what's he's been up to? He's been with Dr. Phil?
Scaramouche appeared with the wife on Dr. Phil.
Okay, let's watch.
Did he come home and say, guess what? I'm going to start working in the White House.
No, we actually never really talked about it.
You didn't discuss this with your wife?
No. But he's kind of like an impetuous guy. In many ways, that's great. In some ways, it's tough when you're married. He's really driven. He's really motivated, which I admire, obviously, and I love about him. But in some situations, you would want to have that conversation.
Why do we care? Why are they on Dr. Phil?
This is amazing to me. This is the longest 15 minutes of fame any White House employee has ever enjoyed. The man was in the White House for 11 days. Poor Sean Spicer was there for 6 months. He's not on Dr. Oz or anything. Why is Anthony Scaramucci showing up?
Are we doing cooking with Scaramucci?
Well,
are we doing a Rachel Ray?
I was actually hoping they would go through with not the divorce, but at least the divorce proceedings, because I was thinking maybe Judge Judy would get a crack.
No. Do we have Judy?
Out. Did you hear what I said? You know who I'm looking at. Out. Out. Just go.
Oh, love Judge Judy.
That would have been fun.
Best.
That would have been a fun moment.
McDonald's, what are they doing? International Women's Day?
McDonald's is trying to honor you, Laura Ingraham, and they're going to do it by inverting their golden arches to form a W on International Women's Day, which is tomorrow. Happy International Women's Day.
Are you kidding me?
No,
they actually went to...
They're doing that on one literal marquee, but then they're doing it digitally on all of their branding.
First of all, do they have a ladder? They get up on a ladder and they take the M off. Someone's job is it to take the M and flip it.
Do you feel more empowered?
I never really understood the International Women's Day. Women are great and they should be protected. Yes, I agree. From the womb to the tomb, they should be protected.
But if I'm McDonald's, I'm thinking, why would you put a big W out there? People are going to think you're Whataburger or Wendy's, right?
Oh, good. That is, the Whataburger does have a W.
Before we go, in honor of The Bachelor, I have to do something for you. The staff and I are presenting you with a rose, but I want you to know.
Yes.
I'm going to take this back before the show is over.
The only rose I'm going to get. Thanks a lot.
There you go.
No, I don't even understand that, Bachelor. He gives a rose, he takes a rose, gives a rose, takes a rose.
Sometimes how it works out. And then he'll be on Dr. Phil explaining it to Scott.
Over, under, and how long that union will last.
If they last 10 seconds, it'll be plenty.
All right.
Keep your rose for now.
All right. Up next, disturbing news on the jihads in America that almost no one is talking about, not even The Bachelor. Stay tuned. And all the other big news of the day are two serious domestic terror stories. Authorities say a man on a jihad pled guilty yesterday to killing a college student in New Jersey and then confessed to killing 3 men in Seattle. Essex County prosecutors said Ali Muhammad Brown was radicalized online and wanted to avenge U.S. policy in the Middle East. Meanwhile, in St. George, Utah, police arrested a boy at his high school yesterday after finding a homemade bomb in his backpack. Investigators say the boy also admitted to replacing an American flag with an ISIS flag at a nearby school last month, as well as spray painting ISIS is coming on the school's exterior. Now, what's going on here? Why? No one's talking about these stories. Let's ask Jim Hansen. He's a terrorism expert and the president of Security Study Group. Jim, I got to say, I haven't seen these stories covered really anywhere except a few places online. Let's start with the man who pled guilty.
He apparently decided that U.S. policies required him to go ahead and start killing. And he was targeting gay people, all right, which is something that is called for in a couple places in some of the Islamist literature. He pled guilty to it. He tracked him down, and he was on what he called a jihad. So this is not someone else deciding that's what he said. He said he was doing it. And in the end, he actually has done ISIS's bidding in a way that lets them take credit for what he did without them having to actually do anything about it.
He was born in the United States, radicalized online, and says, this is what I am doing to fulfill the jihad. Doesn't mean that all Muslims believe this, doesn't mean that all Muslims want this, but nevertheless, it's a disturbing development. And targeting gay Americans in the process, and one college student was just randomly hit by him. Now, let's talk about this other case. After the Parkland shooting, we would think that this would have gotten a lot of attention. An individual who tries to bring a bomb in a backpack. It turns out this kid in Utah, of all places, had tried to put the ISIS flag on another school and had done ISIS graffiti. ISIS in the United States of America, and we're talking about this Sam Nunberg, whether he had alcohol on his breath for most of the day on CNN the other day. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the sad thing is we have taken the fight to ISIS, took down their black flag in Iraq and Syria, shut down their caliphate, and this moron is going to run an ISIS flag up a U.S. school's flagpole, and then he tried to commit mass murder. And you'd think the rest of the media might have been interested in the fact that had this bomb gone off, dozens or more children could have been killed by this guy at ISIS's beck and call. He said he was doing it for them. He had ISIS literature in his backpack. All of this is going on, and somehow that doesn't rise to the level of attention?
No, but we had the Baltimore mayor on earlier, and I'm so glad she joined us, but we're sending 60 buses to Washington on gun control. Meanwhile, we're still dealing with the fact that we have homegrown terrorists in the United States, born here, or people who've come here on these diversity visas or family chain migration visas, who get here, they don't fit in, and then they either go fight the jihad in places like Somalia, or they ultimately decide to wreak havoc on the United States.
You know, President Trump enacted the travel ban, which was not just a travel ban on those countries. It also included extreme vetting procedures. So we went back and looked at who we're going to allow in. We went back and looked to see, can we identify these people? Can we see who should not be coming here? Who has beliefs that are inconsistent with the American way? We're doing a better job of that, but we need to be looking at home, and we need to be supporting the president's policies, not trying to stop him from doing the national security work we need.
But there was this big article this week. This is the kind of stuff the media are reporting on. Only 100 waivers were granted from individuals coming from those predominantly Muslim countries. Mm-hmm. They were bemoaning the fact that, look, you're all these good people from Yemen, Chad, Iran, North Korea, and Somalia want to come here, and Donald Trump's people are not allowing them to come. I heard that, Jim, and I thought, thank goodness that we have extreme vetting taking place, and it's not just the door swinging wide open for any future jihadis. This is the kind of stuff people love about Trump. They love the fact that this is happening. I don't care what the media says.
No, he's doing the right thing. He's doing what he was elected to do. We got sick of the open door policy. We got sick of the diversity lottery visa that guy who ran down and killed 8 people on a bike path in Manhattan last fall did. We don't want that happening.
No, and yet Senator Chris Van Hollen from here in Maryland, right next door, and Senator Jeff Flake, who's not running for re-election, and we know why, because he would have gotten nailed. They said they've received reports of near uniform denial of waivers for visas. This is what they're worried about. I mean, it's either worried about legalizing more people here illegally, or they're worried about, oh, my poor guys from Chad aren't getting in. You can't make it up. Jim, thanks for the updates, and thanks for looking into these 2 cases for us. We really appreciate it. And folks, when it comes to terrorists, Democrats seem, of course, more worried about targeting law-abiding gun owners. One governor stoops to a new low, and we have a new segment for you coming up.
If you just sign that.
And all the other big news of the day are 2 serious domestic terror stories. Authorities say a man on a jihad pled guilty yesterday to killing a college student in New Jersey and then confessed to killing 3 men in Seattle. Essex County prosecutors said Ali Muhammad Brown was radicalized online and wanted to avenge U.S. policy in the Middle East. Meanwhile, in St. George, Utah, police arrested a boy at his high school yesterday after finding a homemade bomb in his backpack. Investigators say the boy also admitted to replacing an American flag with an ISIS flag at a nearby school last month, as well as spray painting ISIS is coming on the school's exterior. Now, what's going on here? Why? No one's talking about these stories. Let's ask Jim Hansen. He's a terrorism expert and the president of Security Study Group. Jim, I got to say, I haven't seen these stories covered really anywhere except a few places online. Let's start with the man who pled guilty.
Mm-hmm. He apparently decided that U.S. policies required him to go ahead and start killing. And he was targeting gay people, all right, which is something that is called for in a couple places in some of the Islamist literature. He pled guilty to it. He tracked him down, and he was on what he called a jihad. So this is not someone else deciding that's what he said. He said he was doing it, and in the end, he actually has done ISIS's bidding in a way that lets them take credit for what he did without them having to actually do anything about it.
He was born in the United States, radicalized online, and says, this is what I am doing to fulfill the jihad. Doesn't mean that all Muslims believe this, doesn't mean that all Muslims want this, but nevertheless, it's a disturbing development. And targeting gay Americans in the process, and one college student was just randomly hit by him. Now, let's talk about this other case. After the Parkland shooting, we would think that this would have gotten a lot of attention. An individual who tries to bring a bomb in a backpack. It turns out this kid in Utah, of all places, had tried to put the ISIS flag on another school and had done ISIS graffiti. ISIS in the United States of America, and we're talking about this Sam Nunberg, whether he had alcohol on his breath for most of the day on CNN the other day. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, we have taken the fight to ISIS, took down their black flag in Iraq and Syria, shut down their caliphate, and this moron is going to run an ISIS flag up a U.S. school's flagpole, and then he tried to commit mass murder. And you'd think the rest of the media might have been interested in the fact that had this bomb gone off, dozens or more children could have been killed by this guy at ISIS's beck and call. He said he was doing it for them. He had ISIS literature in his backpack. all of this is going on, and somehow that doesn't rise to the level of attention?
No, but we had the Baltimore mayor on earlier, and I'm so glad she joined us, but we're sending 60 buses to Washington on gun control. Meanwhile, we're still dealing with the fact that we have homegrown terrorists in the United States, born here, or people who've come here on these diversity visas or family chain migration visas, who get here, they don't fit in, and then they either go fight the jihad in places like Somalia, or they ultimately decide to wreak havoc on the United States.
You know, President Trump enacted the travel ban, which was not just a travel ban on those countries. It also included extreme vetting procedures. So we went back and looked at who we're going to allow in. We went back and looked to see, can we identify these people? Can we see who should not be coming here? Who has beliefs that are inconsistent with the American way? We're doing a better job of that, but we need to be looking at home, and we need to be supporting the president's policies, not trying to stop him from doing the national security work we need.
But there was this big article this week. This is the kind of stuff the media are reporting on. Only 100 waivers were granted from individuals coming from those predominantly Muslim countries. They were bemoaning the fact that, look, you're all these good people from Yemen, Chad, Iran, North Korea, and Somalia want to come here, and Donald Trump's people are not allowing them to come. I heard that, Jim, and I thought, thank goodness that we have extreme vetting taking place, and it's not just the door swinging wide open for any future jihadis. This is the kind of stuff people love about Trump. They love the fact that this is happening. I don't care what the media says.
No, he's doing the right thing. He's doing what he was elected to do. We got sick of the open door policy. We got sick of the diversity lottery visa that guy who ran down and killed 8 people on a bike path in Manhattan last fall did. We don't want that happening.
No, and yet Senator Chris Van Hollen from here in Maryland, right next door, and Senator Jeff Flake, who's not running for re-election, and we know why, because he would have gotten nailed. They said they've received reports of near uniform denial of waivers for visas. This is what they're worried about. I mean, it's either worried about legalizing more people here illegally, or they're worried about, oh, my poor guys from Chad aren't getting in. You can't make it up. Jim, thanks for the updates, and thanks for looking into these 2 cases for us. We really appreciate it. And folks, when it comes to terrorists, Democrats seem, of course, more worried about targeting law-abiding gun owners. One governor stoops to a new low, and we have a new segment for you coming up.
If you just sign that